Hello everyone, sorry for the slightly late start. Welcome back to the Recruiters Hangout. Thank you very much for joining us, if you are joining us today. Today's topic, what do the best recruiters do better? So we'll be discussing this diverse topic today, and we've got some great guests. Alan Whitford is our host as always from AbTech Partnership. I'm Louis Welcomme from Colleague Software, and our other sponsors are UK Recruiter and Smart Online. We're waiting for Mark Stevens to join us at some point today. Unfortunately, Louise from UK Recruiter couldn't be here. We're very lucky to have some great guests with us today. We've got Tony on the right here, Tony Seager from
Hi.
Seal Recruitment Training Solutions. We've got Stephen Eundel in the middle, the MD
Hello.
at Faden International, and we've got Ben Shelton from First Point, and Ben's done all sorts of stuff. So I'm gonna let the guests introduce themselves in a minute and tell us a bit more about why they're qualified, I suppose, to speak about the topic we're discussing today. Just a bit of information for you guys watching if you want to join in. On the right, you should see a Webinar Jam chat panel. About to type into it. Hi, hopefully you can see that, guys. You're welcome to post your questions and comments there. Please do so. You can also tweet us on #RecHangout if you have any questions or comments. We would welcome them, and I'll feed them back to Alan, and he'll pass them on to our guests. I think that is everything, Alan, so over to you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another one of our sterling efforts by Louis to get us organized. This should be a fun chat. What are the best recruiters doing better than the rest of us? And all of us know that there have been better recruiters than we are in the room at various times. What makes them different? What makes them special? I think we should get some robust conversation going amongst our three guests. Hopefully you'll join in. I'll throw a big biller into the equation at some point just to see if that really makes a difference. Is it all about the money, or is it all about taking care of those clients? I got into recruitment because I wanted to help people. Was I crazy? As Louis said, use the Rec Hangout, use the chat room. We'll feed your comments in. Please do join in. It really helps. We'll do a reset 2 or 3 times during the show to give you some chance to breathe and come back in. But I think the best thing to do is just kick right off, and we'll have each of our 3 sterling guests start out by giving a quick intro. Ben, why don't you kick it off?
Hi, Alan. Thanks. So my name is Ben Charlton. I work at First Point. I've spent the last 6 years working in software development recruitment, specifically kind of focusing on the higher end of the market. I've led and managed larger teams around that as well, across a few different agencies. Currently an account director for First Point, as I said, working on a mixture of both managed service and contingent recruitment, and I've worked with some of probably what I would consider the best recruiters in the industry as well, well over £1 million billers, and kind of what they bring to the table and looking at them and kind of many times sort of studying them as well.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm glad you brought up the £1 million big billers. That sets a line for what we consider to be a big biller then. All right, Steve, comments a bit about you?
So, hi gents, hi everyone. My name is Steve Eundel. I am MD for Faden International. We started as 3 of us in a room about 10 years ago and have grown the business now to being 6 offices across the world and a multi-brand business. And I suppose for me, my role is now developing, recruiters into being excellent recruiters, taking sort of relatively raw material and trying to turn them into guys that can really add value. So it's a really interesting topic for me, and I'm keen to get stuck into it.
Right, and that should be an interesting thing for us to talk about. How do we recognize when someone's going to be a great recruiter? Can we tell when they're raw material, or does it take a certain level of experience before we see that they've got it? And Tony, you spent a lot of time trying to make recruiters great. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So mid-20s years experience in the industry. Like most of us, I fell into it. I was a ski racer actually beforehand, and had a few years with Michael Page, Humana, latterly MRI. And then I decided that I wanted to run my own recruitment business, which we did in 1996. Things were going very well, 38 recruiters in a couple of years. up to, we're getting close to 2,000 now, and the market started to go a bit wobbly for us. We're in technology recruitment, so we kind of regrouped and dusted ourselves off, and I decided that I would go and really do what I love doing, which is consulting. So since then, I've been fortunate enough to work in 28 countries globally. Without doubt, the most exciting and dynamic market for me at the moment is Asia. I spend a lot of time in China in particular, last year around 90 days. And that's a really fast-moving marketplace. So I've been fortunate not only to work in many countries, but also the opportunity to work with great recruitment businesses and great recruiters. So I don't have the monopoly on wisdom, but I've got mid-20s, as I said, years experience in the industry, and I hope to share some of that knowledge with you guys today.
Yeah, and like me, Tony, you had hair before you got into recruitment, right?
I certainly did. Yeah, there's pictures on the internet, someone to prove it.
Yeah, that's a challenge with recruitment. Look what it does to you. So as you've got the floor at the moment, Tony, if you had to, say that first one thing, if you will, when you look at recruiters and you're training or helping them, what do you see that makes someone look to be a great recruiter or the best recruiter?
Hunger, and you can't train it. We can train skills, we can train systems, process, CRM systems and so on, but you can't train hunger, you can't train attitude. And again, I've given presentations literally globally on this very point. I think we're quite often looking for the wrong things. If you think about it, what we're looking for is somebody in a 360 at least. We're looking for somebody with BD skills, account management skills, relationship building skills, delivery skills, headhunting or otherwise, good planning, organizational skills, and so on. And I'm sure we could talk about that for many hours actually. But I think the raw material is the hunger, the attitude. Does somebody really want to do it? And you can't train that. So for me, I think that's what we should be looking at first is does the person really have that desire, you might say even burning desire to achieve something. Recruitment's not for everybody, and I think if we can focus on the hunger first, I think then we can start to add the foundations, and from there we can start to build a good recruiter. In essence, I think it's about hours in the saddle. You get night for night. And we've all no doubt heard the 10,000 hours analogy these days, which is, as one speaker I heard recently say, that's actually condensed down to 2 hours 44 a day for 10 years. So 10,000 hours, 2 hours 44 a day for 10 years, you become an expert. As long as you've got the hunger, hey, perhaps you can achieve it. But I think that's the number one, Alan, is that attitude, that hunger.
So if it's that hunger, Steve, when you're looking at, you talked about before that you like to bring some young guys in or young people in and start training them up. Is that one of your assessments when you're talking to them? Do they exhibit some sort of hunger?
Absolutely. I think anyone who's been in recruitment or any kind of industry like it realizes that it's a tough job. It is a tough job, and there are lots of ups and downs, and it's a whole bunch of challenges. So you have to have the resilience and the tenacity to kind of get past those, and to do that, I think you have to know what you're doing it for. And I totally agree with Tony that hunger comes into it. Hunger is a very difficult thing really to assess in an interview situation. I think it does take time to really identify, and sometimes for the individual to identify what it is they're hungry for. And one of the other things Tony alluded to was that sometimes we look for the wrong attributes, and sometimes hunger in the wrong direction is not necessarily a great thing either. So, it's very difficult on when you first meet a prospective recruitment consultant to identify whether they're going to be great. You can look for these raw materials, these raw credentials, and then it is about, like you say, time in the saddle and evolving their understanding of what the industry can give to them, but also what they can give to their clients, because it is certainly more than just making a bunch of phone calls and trying to put some good candidates on a desk. So no, I totally agree that hunger is one of the founding criteria that has to be there if they're going to be in any way successful and good in the industry.
And Ben, do you see it the same way? And I guess the question is, Steve said, what is that hunger? Is it hunger because I want to help people, or it's hunger because I just want to have a great time and loads of dash? How do we define what that hunger is?
I think hunger for a lot of people in this industry does boil down to the kind of the money-driven nature of a lot of people. Personally, it was something that I was always very keen on. Finding a way to get the most out of the industry. People are driven by different things, but it is certainly something that I think that we've seen the better guys come through the door, and those that have stayed and done very well over a longer period of time all have that innate hunger and want and kind of fire in the belly, and really just kind of core drive, not just in their commercial life but also outside of work, and that's something that we've not necessarily interviewed on but certainly dug into and kind of drilled down around on within an interview scenario.
You're muted, Alan.
Yeah, I put myself on mute just to. I followed our own rules. I muted myself. So if we've identified one of the first things is hunger, and hey, there's nothing wrong with being hungry for money, right? If that drives success, as long as we keep the other ethics and ethos of our business out front of that. Tony, you said, well, we can train all the other stuff, and I think, Ben, when we talked beforehand, there's a number of things we talk about to make good recruiters. They got the basics. They use their CRM, and they actually spend time with the clients and the candidates, and they understand how this stuff all matches together. Is that all teachable, Tony?
I think it is, but I think these days what's changed for me in the last 25 years, let's say, in the industry, is actually not necessarily just the industry, although of course all industries evolve and move on, but people have changed. And I think when I got into the industry, it was pretty common practice that you were 1 or 2 years as a consultant before you got promoted to senior consultant. These days, it seems that everybody, I've got a client, for example, who has got team leaders who've got less than 1 year experience in recruitment. I don't think you can shortcut it. I think it just takes time. You've got to learn to recruit. You've got to learn the process. I think business owners tend to promote too quickly then. I think they maybe promote not necessarily based on success. So in a nutshell, Alan, what I'm talking about really is slow down, go faster. Give people the opportunity to learn the process, learn recruitment, and as I said just then, you can't shortcut that learning process. We did some analysis in our business some years ago, actually, on what we called our keepers. So people that stayed with us for more than 3 years. And weirdly, or interestingly, those keepers didn't make their first placement, their first deal, until month 5. So I think it just takes time. We, again, maybe are measuring the wrong things at the wrong time. Give people an opportunity to come on song. Give them a chance to develop the skills, learn the process, learn the systems, whatever they may be in your firm, and give them opportunities to practice it. I'm not convinced that making a quick fix, a quick placement is necessarily a good thing, if you understand me commercially. I think we all want consultants to make money as quickly as possible, yes. But I think there's also that danger if you make the first placement too soon. It's almost like the job's a bit too easy, or it feels like it's too easy. And then when the reality strikes that it's not that easy, that it is really hard work and it takes a lot of dedication, I think people then struggle to maintain that same motivation. But I think it's tradable. I think it's all tradable, yeah.
I think I kind of agree with some of what Tony says there, in as much as that I think there are lots of instances now where consultants get promoted too quickly, and I think a lot of that comes out of companies' desperation to retain people. They kind of feel that they need to promote them and need to see them progressing through for them to be retained. But actually, for me, that doesn't necessarily address the retention problem. I certainly don't think it helps them become good at the job. No. If I look at maybe some of the people that have been really successful in our organisation, I think when they first turned up, they had the hunger. That was quite clear. They may not have been able to identify at that point what it was they were hungry for, but they had a hunger to be good at something and to actually progress. And I think if you can then tap into that desire to want to be good to it, and you can start to outline what good looks like, you can start to make some progress on moving along that journey. Now, we are an organically grown business, and I think we are probably one of the businesses that do promote people relatively quickly, and I'm comfortable with that. And in fact, we don't have a timescale for any promotion in the business. It is all achievement orientated, but it has to be achievement. It's not just, well, you've been here for 3 days and you're still here, so we're promoting you. It has to be based on genuine success, and sometimes identifying the metrics of success is where the challenge lies. But I think if you're able to do that, and you can chart a continuous path, if you like, to people actually becoming genuinely great at the job, then it makes promotion criteria much easier to set in a meaningful way.
Well, and I think that's interesting, Steve. Thank you for that, because we're going to get some comments coming in the chat room as well that relate around that measurement piece, and I think that'll be something for us to come back to in a minute, because that if we are measuring the wrong things, what do we measure? What do we measure for promotion? But I also like to ask Ben too, this idea of how much training do we give them? When do they have to be live? I mean, so my training, I was given a yellow pad with all of the terminology I needed to know about IT, and said, come back tomorrow once you've known that, and here's the phone, and here's your card box. That was pretty much the extent of my training. Now, of course, I'm a bit of a graybeard, so we know how long ago that happened. But I still get the feeling there's a lot of recruitment businesses that is still pretty much their training. Hey, you know how to use a computer, you know how to use a phone, hopefully. Off you go, and you got to make a placement this week, or obviously you're not one of the lads. Ben, is that how you see it in a lot of companies?
I think the better companies that I've seen operate, and we do it here, and certainly at the another company that I worked at previously, the best organisations that retain the best people and generate the best consultants at the back of that are the ones that have quite a structured and formalised training program. That might mean, as as Tony said earlier, that someone doesn't do their placement or their first placement till the 5th month or 6th month or however long it takes. But if they've got the processes right and you've hired the right person with the hunger and the drive and the determination to do well, that does equate to someone that would eventually put themselves in a position where they are successful in a recruitment or sales-based business generally.
Okay, so let me wind this back a little bit then, and we've got a question in from one of our people. Dave, just saying, well, maybe we need to wind back and say, okay, how do we define best? What are we actually really talking about when we say the best recruiters? Is it just numbers of placements? Is it just money? Is it bringing in new business? Is it, hey, they manage other people in the building? I mean, what do we mean when we define best?
For me, if I look at our business, I think at the end of the day, recruitment is measured in fees. So money is always going to be a part of that. You can't really get away from that. But I think that at the end of the day, we are here to provide a solution for our clients. They're the people who are really paying for us. We have an obligation to candidates, of course, but it's the clients that are actually contracting our services in most instances. So for me, best is about providing a value-add service, not a commoditized service, something that goes beyond just, providing a CV, because LinkedIn can do that these days, and there's many other sources where they can, get that kind of level of service. But it's about going, to the next level where you actually become, a partner in whatever that business is trying to achieve. Money then sort of is a byproduct of that, because if you are successful, you create a fee, and that's kind of how it's traditionally measured. But, money and the fee shouldn't actually really materialize unless you are producing a value-add service. There are all sorts of other metrics you can look at after that in terms of reciprocal business, embedded relationships, and metrics as to how you can manage that. And Tony, you probably got some decent tools for actually looking at that side of things. But to me, it starts with actually generating success for the people contracting you, and that is the client.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely agree, Steve. I was in an office not that long ago, and horror of horrors, I heard one of the consultants say to a candidate, I need you to take this job because it means I'll hit my monthly target, and in doing so I'll earn my commission. I kid you not.
It's a presumptive close, right?
it's a something close, but look, it's client and candidate first. Absolutely, help our customers get what they want, and you get what you want. And to to keep the point going that Steve mentioned, you know, how people develop in the industry is, of course, very much dependent on their own pace. You know, certain people are good at certain parts of the job rather than other parts. So I completely agree that there shouldn't necessarily be a, you know, a point in time when you become this. But I do think there should be almost an apprentice period, let's call it, where, you know, there should be a minimum criteria that's not just based on results, and by that I mean financial results. I'm talking about, Steve mentioned their metrics, so I'm talking about, yeah, okay, we can talk about the result of metrics being the financials, but I'm also talking about quality-based metrics, which could be, for example, you know, a consultant who's coming on well, perhaps he's good at a certain part of the job, can help train the peers. So peer-to-peer learning, I think, is a great way to assess people's ability and skills level. I think attitudinal metrics is also a good way to measure people. So it's not just about the financial number. Yes, we all want the inverted commas big billers, again, whatever that means. But I think that everybody on the panel today and everybody that's listening to us today would agree that it's not just about that. It's building your own personal brand within the marketplace, within your organization. You know, success breeds success, after all. So it's, you know, great recruiters are not going to last in a business very long if they're not surrounded by like-minded people. So it is about building that personal brand, taking a sense of pride in the name card that you carry. I'm not suggesting that everybody should be in the same company for the rest of their lives, but what I am saying is that when they're there is that sense of pride. And when they leave, they look back on the time in that business and say, yeah, I helped build something different, something special. And I think that's 90% of what we're talking about here. It's the combination of all of the above condensed into what I just said.
Okay, I just want to point out, by the way, we're getting some great comments here in our stream. Bob, Dave, Nino, Rohan, Thon, and Bob, Martin, Sophie, a lot of people throwing some questions in at us, so I don't think we're going to run out of stuff to talk about in the next 45 minutes or 40 minutes. Just do a quick reset. This is RecHangout. We've got Steve, Tony, and Ben with us. We're talking about what do the best recruiters do better. You know, follow us on the hashtag RecHangout. If you're on Google, join us in the webinar jam. And the link is out there as well. And happy to have you on board. So a couple things, guys, it's sort of coming out of the themes, and we've been talking around a lot of it as well. A couple points for us to think about. One is, we talked about how we're going to progress, and Steve, you talked about career progression. Do our best recruiters end up making our best team leaders, team managers, you know, department managers, or do the best recruiters stay just because they want to keep recruiting? And then one we'll want to throw into the mix in a little bit, which is, you know, we've had one question in, is there a difference between, you know, male and female recruiters in terms of who becomes best recruiters? I'll throw that hot potato out and see if anybody wants to volunteer for that one. But Steve, first of all, what about the promotion piece? Are your best recruiters make good managers?
No, I think for me they are totally different skill sets. That's not to say that one can't evolve to another, but they are completely different skill sets. I think on the progression point, I'm very comfortable working in an environment of fast progression, and actually I think giving people the visibility and transparency where they can see what they have to do to progress, I'm very, very comfortable with that. The challenge for me is that they have to provide the raw materials. We talked about the hunger, we talked about some of the aptitude and the commitment to quality that they need to actually move up the rungs, and then it's up to the business really to identify those people and develop them on. And for me, recruitment is a taught skill as a skill. I don't think it's innate. I don't think it's something people just naturally, you know, wake up and are good at. It's something that you do have to go through the hard yards that Tony described, and you do have to gain the experience, the discretion, the integrity, all these things that are important to being successful. But I think as recruitment businesses, we have an obligation to identify that and bring that out of people. And I think if you can tap into someone's hunger, and that's something we talked about at the start, and give them the opportunity to progress and see how they can influence their own career path, not just their income, but their career path, then hopefully it becomes a, you know, kind of a symbiotic thing, because they push to be better, and then you get better consultants out the end of it. That is not to say they're going to make the best managers, and I generally don't think that's the case. Some of the best managers in the business we had are people that struggled with elements of the role that actually just did not suit their personality, and mentoring and developing individuals is something they're much better at. So I think a mistake that a lot of recruitment consultants make is that management is the only career path for them, that it is the only next step. I don't personally subscribe to that. I think that you look at the attributes that somebody has and you put them in a role where they can be effective and successful. So for some that may be management, for some that may be more account management or business development, for others it might just be being an absolute shining light in the business. So I think there's a number of paths they can take, and it should just be based upon their ability, their motivation, and their skill set.
Steve,
all right,
sorry,
go ahead.
Jump in really quickly? Just something that was said there. I've always thought recruiters, one of the core things for them is the ability to form relationships or to get along with people, to be fair, to be sociable animals, so to speak. Can that be trained into someone, or that must be inherent, I suppose, in personality? And how do you measure that at an interview? That always gets me as well. I suppose you have a feeling, but
yeah, I mean, there is a core of communication skills you have to have. That's absolutely right. And for example, nobody would become a professional footballer if they couldn't walk. So I think there is that base level you have to have. But actually, I think when you start to look at the level of technique you need to be able to really qualify someone's motivations, qualify someone's skill set, assess the value to an organization, match ambitions and cultures, that is a taught skill set. So 100%, that is something that you can teach people, and it invariably builds their communication skills, but it's not something they will have ever done to the level we need to do it. Our business, we do focus on the kind of mid to upper part of the market, and that means that the career decisions people are taking are significant, and actually the roles they're taking on have a very broad range of skills. So it isn't just a word matching exercise. You have to have a much deeper level of qualification criteria, and that comes down to how you can talk to someone and entice out of them what a good next step for that individual looks like, or what a good fit for that person's team looks like. So yeah, to answer your question, I think 100% it is taught.
Okay, so Ben, let me put one to you then, and thank you for that, Steve. We've talked about the best recruiters. We said, okay, we could teach the basics, we can teach the process, etc. But Sophie and Tom and a couple others have been asking, well, and Frankie, have I got to sell my soul? Have I got to be 24/7 to become a big biller and become the best recruiter, or is it something different that I can be learning? I've gone back to them and I said, I think it's about being proficient and efficient. It isn't just about 24/7. But what about it in your business, Ben? I mean, how do you see getting those good recruiters to be great recruiters? Is it just putting in more hours?
No, in short, it's not. I think the best recruiters often don't the longest hours. Having done both and worked in environments where I am spending 14, 15, 16 hours a day in the office, and now not being in that position, I think it's being a lot more clinical with your time during the day. There's a lot of distractions in a recruitment office a lot of the time, so it's being able to focus your energy and time into the right activities throughout the day, making sure that you inevitably get the things that need to be done quickly, to avoid spending that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of mentality or timescale, in the office. I think it boils down for a lot of people to ensuring that they really look at sort of what they're doing with their time, and making sure that a plan is put in place every day. It's something that I do religiously before I leave every single day. I spend 5 minutes and work out exactly what it's going to be doing. If I come in the next day and I haven't got one, I am probably useless for about 3 to 4 hours.
All right. And that's useless in every sense, presumably. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Now, when you're looking at the training and helping some of these companies build, Tony, we've talked about the importance of maybe good recruiters or great recruiters aren't necessarily best managers, but one of our questioners has asked, well, what about do I only become a great recruiter if I've got a great? Is that part of what you see when you're putting this sort of training programs together?
Sorry, Alan, you froze then, so I missed part of the question. Can you just repeat it?
Okay. Yeah. So one of our questioners has asked about mentors, and is having a great mentor really what you need in order to become a great recruiter? is that part of what you do when you're in there training with companies and helping them build mentors as well as just the individual recruiters?
Sure. Thanks for repeating the question. Yeah, look, I think the first 90 days of a newcomer's life into the industry is key. Get them on board, give them good base training, and by that I'm talking about, train a little, practice, train a bit more, practice, and over that 90 days they start to learn the process of recruitment. There comes a point in time when the way in which you instill knowledge into an individual changes. So it moves from, let's say, classroom-based training into one-to-one mentoring, coaching, and so on. So yeah, absolutely. I spend probably in the UK market 40% of my time actually mentoring rather than stand-up training. I do have a few clients where I'll do a training session on a particular subject matter, but most, as I say, about 40% of my time is spent with consultants, one-to-one mentoring, bringing them on. They'll discuss certain issues, areas. I'll give them some suggestions in terms of how they may handle a particular situation. It may be a specific skill that I'm training as well. But yeah, certainly there comes a point where you move from classroom-based stand-up training into one-to-one coaching and mentoring. That definitely has an impact. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm sure the guys would also agree, that you sometimes get to a stage in recruitment where you think you know how to be a great recruiter, and I think that's the time when you go backwards, because to my mind there's you never stop learning. I've been doing this, as I said, for 25 years now or so, and I'm always learning a different technique, even if it's just one new aspect of process that I can train, basically. So it's about constant learning, and it's being open to learn, willingness to learn. I think that actually is one of the characteristics that makes a recruiter a great recruiter. I've got 5 or 6 characteristics actually, which I'm happy to share as this discussion develops. But certainly the two I've shared so far is, number one, attitude, and secondly, that willingness to learn.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think this is going to be interesting. Well, I think it's good. We'll keep feeding these in because we are getting a lot of questions in our audience about what's making the good recruiter. What are they doing different than what the best recruiters are doing? And even we've talked a bit about defining best. We've even got some people now talking about time management. And Sebastian wants to know, Steve, do you actually have a very structured week that that your best recruiters do, so they know exactly what they're doing every day, what their percentage breakdown, where do they spend their time? Is there a formula that the best recruiter does?
I'm not, and again, this may not be something that is echoed by all, but I'm not a massive fan of rigidity around day plans and structures. I kind of feel that it's something that you often have to help juniors and rookies into the industry with, because there are so many components to recruitment that actually they do need some guidance on where to spend their time. But for me, if we're talking about the guys that that are going from good to great, I feel that they need to understand their desk. They need to understand the point in the process they're at with their clients and be able to allocate their time accordingly. For example, if they are working on a mandate and they are candidate short, they really need to spend some time identifying the candidate pool for that rather than trying to find another role to work alongside it. Flip side, if they've got some really strong candidates and they don't have the right contacts to connect those candidates with, then they need to spend some time working on that aspect of the job. Remember, recruitment, we talk about it as a thing, but the reality is it's a series of processes, and actually you assign your time according to where you are in those processes. So I feel that the good recruiters get a sense for where they need to spend their time, a sense for where that their stakeholders, their clients, their candidates need them to put their energy, and they're able to do that. And that's probably one of the defining attributes between the good and the great, is the great get a much better sense of how to monetize and resultize their time rather than just sit there and kind of go through the motions, as it were.
Can I make a point here? Thank you, Steve. To me, actually, yeah, it's really very much around task management as opposed to time management. And I think it just echoes what Steve said. I think, yeah, for a rookie, and a rookie, I'm talking, 12 to 18 months in the industry. Yeah, it of course makes sense to show them the way in which you can break up the day in such a way, or the working week, that you cover all the tasks that need to be covered in order to give that balance to the desk. What seems to be the case in my experience, certainly, is people tend to do the parts of the role they like the most first, and the parts of the role they like the least last. In recruitment, that tends to be BD. What happens then is there's an influx of candidates and not necessarily enough vacancies or job orders to work on. To my mind, then, it should be about balance, and that's task management. So it's prioritizing tasks in a way that you can maximize the revenues given the time you're in the office. As a quick aside, I've got a client in Pennsylvania in the States, two guys. They've got a couple of researchers. Last year they did 2.7 million between the two of them. They're married with kids. They get to the office at 8:30. They leave at 6:30. So they're not working 18 hours a day plus, as Ben was talking earlier. You don't need to. But I think the two biggest reasons for failure in recruitment, and when I say failure, I mean either fail to achieve your full potential, or just fail altogether. Number one is lack of planning. Ben, I completely agree. I think planning is key, and planning, depending on skills level and experience, could either be that kind of really kind of micro stuff of what you're going to do when, to the more experienced consultant who just has that instinct, as Steve said, that they know where to prioritize tasks. And the second reason is working on poorly qualified business. I wonder how many roles people have to work on before they get paid a fee. Great recruiters know where to focus their efforts. They're efficient, they're smart, and they work on jobs where they stand the biggest chance of getting that placement fee at the end of the day.
I would also just add one thing to that, because I'm kind of the same view, which is that in recruitment, you could recruit 24 hours a day if you wanted to. There is always another company, another candidate. There's always more things you could do. And I think one of the things that I really try and push down on to the recruiters in our business is that more is not always more. If you have a client that is relying on you to fill a role, or you have a candidate that has asked you to find some opportunities within your client base, then focus on doing that first. Just because it gets a bit tough, just because it doesn't fall into your lap in 5 minutes, don't then move on and find something else and something else. And one of the things that I've kind of had a challenge with when interviewing some recruiters who are looking to move into our business is their answer is whenever they come up with a challenge, they'll go and find something new. And you can always do that in recruitment, but that doesn't yield a result. That doesn't yield a satisfied client, and that then monetarily doesn't yield a fee and commission in their pocket. So there is sometimes a re-educational process you have to go through to get people to realize that actually, in recruitment, certainly on a contingent basis, you get paid upon results. So you have to put in the requisite work to actually generate those results. You can't keep flipping from one to another. And even if that is you love BD and you keep doing BD, well, that's no good unless you actually bring some of these to a conclusion. So I think, it's very much about understanding what processes you can see through to a conclusion and committing to making that happen.
Yeah, so would you say, though, if we think about this, and I think you're right, it's task management, not necessarily time management, but what I would call it would be, do you have the ability to eliminate the distraction principle? And I'm pathetic at that. I admit it freely. I very easily move on to that other thing because it seemed to be more important when it came in. And also, obviously, the fear of a lot of people to actually get on the phone. And we talked a lot about this in many of our shows, that the phone actually can be used to communicate with people other than just texting. And maybe we should actually call people at home at night when they actually can talk to us. But don't get me on that rant, because I'll be there for days on it. We are getting some interesting comments, though, from people about, I think you're right about the time versus task management. Have we been given the right sort of guidance along the way from our managers that actually helps us make it do that? And Sophie's asking a lot of great questions, even says we're doing a good job. So thank you, Sophie, for that. I'm glad to know that someone's actually appreciating what we're doing. We've talked a bit about the time management. I think we've kind of done that a little bit. What would you say, Tony, is your next one? You've talked about task management. You've been doling out those pearls of what's the next key that Ben and Steve should come back to you on?
Well, planned and organized, as I've alluded to. I think that people who naturally plan, and I'm not just talking about creating a to-do list. In my view, that's called creating a to-do list. I'm talking about at the end of each day or each couple of days, you're analyzing what's gone well, what's not gone well, any lessons learned, and then as a result, you can create your action plan, let's say for the following day or days, or even sessions, depending on whether you're contract recruiters or perm. I fully accept that if you're a contract recruiter, it's really tough to plan your tasks and chunks of time, let's say, because income's a requirement. The booking needs to be filled pretty quickly, because if you don't do it, your competitors have already got access to the candidates, and the CV is already over there. So it is tougher, no doubt about it, to plan tasks and time if you're running a full contract desk. That said, I think that what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing day in, day out, expecting a different result. I think great recruiters learn by some mistakes, and I'm not suggesting that the old cliche, make one mistake and never again. I think you make repeated mistakes, and I think they're all of a similar nature. Let's be candid, but I do think that great recruiters learn by those mistakes and say, there's no point banging my head against the brick wall trying to find that elusive candidate, the needle in the haystack scenario, if I've struggled for the last X number of days. So take stock. If you haven't found what you're looking for, get back to the client. At the end of the day, we're just we're the intermediaries. We bring the talent to a client. We bring the results to the client. So if what we've found is not what the client's looking for, we've done a full search or a good search, we can then go back to the client and say, look, this is what's available in the marketplace. The brief maybe needs to change a little bit. What's your suggestion? But to keep going back again and again into the marketplace looking for that needle in the haystack, I think is not the best way forward. I think great recruiters know that. So planned and well organized is a really key characteristic.
Steve, does that jive well with how you see the life? And also, it's an interesting question because somebody's asked us, are you more interested in that recruiter who fills 50% of his roles but makes more money, or the recruiter who fills 80% of his roles and has less billing? Steve, how do you define that? Because I think going back to the client saying, hey, we can't do this one is a pretty brave thing to do.
Yes, but required, because at the end of the day, you set an unrealisable expectation on the client's side, and for me as a business, we're then paying somebody to resource something we're never going to get a return from. So it is a brave thing to do, but actually it's an honest thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. I think for me, the question of I suppose what you're really asking is, what does success look like? Is it big billing? Is it fill rates? Is it these sorts of things? I don't actually think they're all mutually exclusive. I think often they go hand in hand. At the end of the day, what we want from our consultants is, return on their time, and return looks like success, and that is filling roles for our clients. What the consultant wants is the opportunity to progress and the opportunity to earn well, and so that ties into that success. So I think you have to get to the stage where you can identify for a consultant what their capacity is and whether they're taking on too many roles and that's why their fill rate isn't good, or whether they actually are not working in depth enough, and you help them to understand that the right input balance to get the right results. But the best consultant for us is the one that actually adds the most value to a client. That generates revenue for us. It generates commission for the consultant, but it generates a value proposition to the client, and that's what we're most worried about. And I think the consultants that actually have an interest in longevity in the industry, and obviously the three of us on the panel have all been in the industry for a while. You realise that one placement is not going to make or break your career. So actually, it's about forming a track record and a level of trust in your clients that you will deliver on a repeated basis, and that's what gives you the opportunity to be in the industry for a while. So yeah, I don't think it's just one or the other. I think it's actually a focus on delivering a result.
All right, thanks, Steve. Quick reset. We got about sort of 15 minutes to go. This is RecHangout, and we've got three brilliant guests, and Steve, Tony, and Ben talking about what the best recruiters do, different than the good recruiters, and also what it means to the business. And we'll come to that last bit, I think, in the last quarter hour. We've been talking about individual recruiters, but what does that mean to the recruitment business as a whole? And does the owner, operator, manager of the recruitment business have maybe a slightly different goal in mind than maybe some of the individual recruiters? But Ben, I understand you're the man with a plan. I've been It's in Twitter, Ben. That's all I can say. How do you feel about this process? That the planning piece is that really that critical?
I think that there's an element of planning that has to be done, certainly for myself, and I know that the guys have obviously echoed something very similar, but I think you have to be flexible in your nature enough to react to things that happen throughout the day. People do get new roles that come on, specifically from a contract perspective. You need to be able to sort of almost drop what you're doing and kind of crack on with those if they are as urgent as certainly some of them are made out to be. I think something that Steve kind of touched on as well was talking about being that consultant though, and that's something that I think isn't really used enough within the industry, and actually having that consultative approach with your clients, having the nous and the wherewithal to go back to them when something isn't quite right, and something that was actually mentioned on LinkedIn previously. Was about someone going back to their client, maybe not asking the right questions, therefore sending the wrong CVs, giving recruiters a bad name, ruining the industry as a whole, and giving that kind of spray and pray mentality and kind of wider for the wider public out there, or the recruitment public, as I should say. And I think that consultative approach is something that really should be addressed and is addressed by the better recruiters. Someone that can go back and change and consult properly on what, certainly in my market, what technologies they might be looking for, how they might be going to look for, being realistic with timescales, with budgets, etc., etc. But yeah, with regards to obviously your initial question, yeah, I think it's the flexibility side of things that is really going to make someone great.
Okay. A quick question for you, Ben. As owner-operators of businesses, do we have the same goal as the big biller or the best recruiter has?
I think certainly from our point of view, at First Point, we are looking at, from a bigger picture, bringing on, maturing and developing bigger, solid accounts as a business. An individual recruiter might be looking at a singular account, might be looking at a singular role, maybe a slightly narrow-minded view, and it's certainly something that I've been through. But now looking at a wider spectrum, it is about that growth outside of that and making sure that we can foresee a future to the business by bringing on bigger accounts, having that right kind of consultative approach that I've just mentioned, and going from there. Does that make sense?
You there, Alan?
Okay, I've looked at there for a little bit. Yep. So I'm guessing you were saying, did that make sense? It seemed to make sense. Did it make sense? Did it make sense to you, Steve?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think again, for me, there's a point of generalization here, and that is that not all consultants are motivated by the same thing. One of the things that we've done in our business is we've tried to align consultants' motivations with the business motivations as much as we can. So, for example, we have a very detailed, in-depth EMI scheme to enable them to become stakeholders in the business. We have this organic promotion structure which allows them to actually, move forwards in their careers, not just see it as a pay packet. And hopefully, what that does is it means that, the benefit to their career is actually the same as the benefit to the business, and that does become about forging long-term client relationships, like Ben mentions. You don't want a candidate a consultant who's willing to do a short-term job on a long-term client. That's not going to work for the business. But actually, if that consultant has a view of longevity with your business, then that doesn't work for them either. Businesses don't always have the same objective. You get businesses which are very orientated towards growth, some that are very orientated towards more of a lifestyle balance. So I kind of think that, it's about aligning the right consultants with the right business and making sure that actually you're pulling in the same direction, because if you're not, you'll only ever get further apart. And that comes down to sometimes saying there might be a great recruiter, but they're just not a good fit for your business. Or flip side, it might be saying that actually there's a recruiter that's not brilliant now, but with the right investment they can get to where you need them to be. So I think there is a responsibility on behalf of leaders of recruitment businesses to be very transparent about what their value proposition is, very transparent about what their reward structure is, and then there's also a responsibility on consultants to be very honest about what their objectives are. And actually, if everyone is honest in that way, you should get people working and going in the same direction.
All right, Tony, thoughts?
Oh, I was muted then. I think that people's motivations change with age, frankly. A newcomer to the industry, they're keen to achieve their year one target. They earn their commission, and I think that that's not necessarily. It could be, but it could be in line with company objectives and what the company's looking to achieve. But over time, I think people's personal goals change. So it may be, they've got the house or the new car and so on, and people's motivations change. Probably, actually, more in line with company goals. What I'm talking about here is perhaps rather than just being materialistic, it's now to become an expert in a marketplace, to inverted commas own the market, to become a specialist in that sector. And I think that's what changes. And also I think over time people's goals, objectives fall more in line with what the company's looking to achieve. And of course, at that point then, you're now really building a business, you're really offering brand value, not just to the customer base, client candidate, but also to the consultants, the staff base. And I think that's really crucial in helping create this great biller. But something that was mentioned just now on one of the panels, I think you might have mentioned it actually, Alan. I'm not sure that all business owners, or indeed business owners within the industry, are necessarily looking for big billers. I think what we're looking for is consistent billers who are motivated. They have a desire to, again, build that brand and to become part of a team that's focused on, market ownership. And I think that's what we're looking for. I would much rather have a team of 10, and it's very difficult to achieve, we know that, but if I had 10 or 20, 200 plus K billers, am I a happy guy? Of course I am, rather than having just the one big biller. And again, I think that's what most people would agree with, I think, in the industry.
Alan's fallen. Alan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Sorry, I was fading a little bit.
Are you paying attention, Alan?
I'm paying attention. I was tweeting out about Ben. Well, it's interesting when we talk about, so what I want to have a balance of, a bunch of 200-300K billers or £1 million biller. There was a stream here in our comments for minutes, which was, and a little bit of this is about movement within the industry. So Steve, you and Ben, you've trained your guys up, and they're up there and they're billing a couple $100 grand now, but then the grass always looks greener and they go somewhere else where they think they can bill 300 or 400. But also, if you're as a business, you're reliant on that £1 million guy, and he decides to leave, that puts a pretty serious hole in your balance sheet in a hurry, doesn't it? So what do we do about that sort of retention of those really best recruiters? How do we keep them here? Well, of course, they all could just go back and open up in their bedroom, which is what most people have done, isn't it? Start their own business. But what do you do to retain those really best recruiters? Steve?
To be honest with you, I don't know if I agree with that, Alan. I don't think that the standard root cause is that then people go and set up on their own. I think it's exactly what, in line with what Ben was saying, it's about, what people's motivations actually are and aligning your business with that. I don't think you can be all things to all people, as a business owner, whether it's in recruitment or any business. So you can't try and have a strategy that keeps every single person in your business. And again, to kind of tie in with what Tony said before, people's motivations do change, and sometimes, I don't think they always change more in line with the business. Sometimes I actually feel that, I've been in this industry for a long time, I've gained some skills I want to go and use elsewhere, right? So, and I've absolutely no problem with that. All you can do is give people a platform to achieve their goals, and if their goals shift and that's suddenly not in line with what your business does, then there's no issue with that. Over the years, there's obviously been a number of people that have been part of our business that have kind of got off the bus, as it were, at various points because they want to go and do something different, and I have no issue with that at all. As long as while they're here, they're working proactively for their own development, proactively for the business, then I have no problems with it. So, there are some people who'll be lifers in this industry, and I'm kind of putting my hand up as probably one of them. But that's not going to be everybody, and I understand that, and I don't think we want to try and force people to stay. We want to make sure that actually, if they're in the business, that they're working well for the clients and adding value, rather than kind of keeping them here by grabbing them by the hair. So I don't know what Ben thinks, but certainly for me, it's about making sure that while they're here, they have the hunger we talked about at the very start, and they are they're committed to trying to do a good job.
I think for me, Steve, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's you can't be everything to everyone, but certainly giving people the option that while they are here, that they can go the distance, and that option is there for them. You talked about shareholder kind of opportunities within the business and so on. That's something that I know for me was a massive draw to First Point, and something that's now become a reality. But when I was maybe sort of in my first 6, 12, 18 months, was I really thinking about that? No, I moved on from that company, and that wasn't because it wasn't offered. It was, but it just wasn't my goal then. And I think something that you said is making sure that people have, whilst they're there, the right attributes and the right activities, and they're doing the right things for your clients and for your candidates as a business. As long as the end user is being looked after, then surely you're doing the right thing as a business and generally.
Yeah, and we have to reinvent our proposition on a regular basis, because the requirements to keep candidates, keep consultants interested does change, and I think the more you kind of talk to your workforce, and the more you can be engaged with your workforce to see where they are in their own mindset, the more you can align your reward structure to what they do. And I know we don't want to sit here and say that money is the be all and end all. It's certainly not. But what is fair to say is that reward does breed behaviour. So if that reward is promotion, if that reward is some kind of equity participation scheme, if that reward is commission, if that reward is international relocation opportunities, these all tie in to making sure that your consultants are motivated to do a good job for your business.
Okay, and thanks, guys. I appreciate that. And boy, hasn't an hour flown by fast? We're close to the end. What I'd like then, for each of you, maybe just that quick one-liner that we maybe haven't covered, or your best top tip. What does it take to be the best recruiter? And Ben, you're still on screen, so fire away.
Don't leave things to chance. See things through to the end, and I'm talking about when I say the basics, and it's something I've mentioned. This is something that I do religiously, even down to things like interview preparation. Talking about who are they meeting, how they're meeting them, where they're meeting them, what are they wearing. It's the little things that make the big differences to these people, and that's what will increase your ratios, increase your metrics. It's something else that was in the jam there as well. And it is those basic things that good recruiters do that will inevitably make them into the better ones among us.
Okay, Steve?
I think for me it's about being very deliberate in everything you do. So if you are working with a client, understand the value of that client and work to the value of that client. If you're working with a candidate, exactly the same. There are so many options in recruitment to just tick boxes, and that doesn't differentiate you from anybody. So be deliberate and seek competitive advantage in every single aspect of the process, and think about it from the other stakeholders' point of view, so from a client or a candidate's point of view, because they may not share the same viewpoint as you do. So be deliberate and take a 360 view.
Okay, and we'll actually close with you, Tony. I don't think we got through all of your top 6, so any that you were holding back, now's the time.
Okay, thank Alan. Well, in a nutshell, just to echo what Ben and Steve have said, I think that my closing statement is set goals, plan. I suppose you could say, where do you want to get to? Where are you now? How are you going to achieve it? And it's the how you're going to achieve it piece which obviously takes the time. It's building that plan around what it is you want, the step-by-step process of achieving whatever your life goals or your business goals might be, and I think that's probably the best way to close my piece today.
All right, brilliant, guys. It's been fantastic. We just put out in the jam. Thanks. We've had a lot of great comments from a bunch of people out there who have been very active today, and a bit on Twitter as well. Louise Triance will be doing the post-event wrap-up in UK Recruiter once she gets back from her journeys this afternoon. Louis, over to you for your wrap, but I'd just like to thank all 3 of you guys for really spending your time today. We probably could have done this for another 2 or 3 hours, or it could have actually been a full paid-for seminar for Tony, so thank you for that, Tony.
You're welcome.
Louis, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, for hosting as well, and thank you guys. Really good. Thanks for all the comments. Yeah, we will have Louise's wrap-up blog post over to you guys as soon as we can, and maybe Tony, we can put in the sort of 6 pointers in there, and we'll also link to all of you guys' websites and any other additional resources Louise can dig up. We'll also be putting this show onto SlideShare, and one of my colleagues will be transcribing it for me very kindly. So you
Louis got a slave now. Okay.
Yeah. I used to have to do that. And that'll be transcribed. So if you want to read this and if you want to share it with your friends and families, then you can do. Next show, 16th of September, how to develop your international recruiting capability. I haven't secured all the guests for that yet, but I know we have, I believe we have Graham from Consult Partners, who's been on before, joining us, and I need to find a couple more guests, but we'll find a couple more international recruitment agencies. I know I think I could think of one, but they're on the show loads. So.
Right. Well, we might say, Louis, out there, all of our guests that are listening in now, you've been great in the jam column. If you want to actually join in the show, ping Louis a message and say, hey, what about me?
Yeah, you'd be most welcome. I'd like to do a promotion to for True London that's coming up, Alan, as well, which is a great conference, or unconference as it's called, True London 50. I think the organiser's birthday, he's 50 years old, Bill Borman. That is on the 4th of September before the next Hangout. So if anyone's watching has some time, that's a really good event for recruiters, consultants and owners and managers, so come along to that. I just like it. We're not sponsoring or anything, it's just a good event. So anyway, I think that's it, Alan. We'll get the notes out to everyone. We'll get the next Hangout out on our blog when we add the details, so you can sign up to it again. But thank you all. Fantastic Hangout.
Thanks everybody.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.